Open Darren Jaime here with you. The holiday season begins this week, and it is easily one of the busiest traveling holidays, meaning crammed and packed airports. As we know, the TSA has begun new security techniques with the addition of the new body scanner and pat-down. Which one would you prefer when going through airport security? That question is up to you. Also, the question is, what are the chances of Sarah Palin actually becoming our next president in 2012? And the most recent story making headlines is the attack by North Korea on South Korea's island of Yeopyeong Island. Here to break down these stories and more is attorney, political analyst, and professor at SUNY Maritime, Mark Meirowitz, and good to have you here.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well.
Lots going on.
Lots going on.
Oh,
lots
boy.
going on. Let's talk on the domestic front as well. A lot of talk has been talked with Dancing with the Stars, Bristol Palin, Sarah Palin hanging out there. But then not only that, with Bristol's win and victory, then the question comes into play. Sarah Palin, how relevant is she, and can she actually be president in 2012? She said in an interview, if she had to do it in 2012, she could beat Barack Obama. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, Bristol Palin lost to Jennifer Gray, so that may be an indication of the future. I think Sarah Palin is a very interesting phenomenon. It's really hard to tell whether or not she has a shot or not at the presidency. She has set herself up as a major political figure. She has a major operation supporting her, which was detailed in the Sunday Times magazine last week. Operatives running around, Twitters going all over the world. She has a reality show about Alaska. She's out there in a big way. The question is whether or not she's actually going to make it and whether she's qualified. A number of the major political leaders have said outright that they don't think she's qualified to be president. She has been a very exciting and energetic aspect of the Tea Party movement. She had a lot of wins, but she also had a lot of losses. So the story is a little bit mixed.
But the strategy. Let's talk about the strategy. Because we look at the fact she's got this new book out.
Yes.
She's running around with this book. She's hitting places. Kind of like what Barack Obama did before the audacity of hope. Many people did not give him a chance. The fact that he had a book out really did some things amongst the public eye. Can Palin be using some of these same strategies, hoping that it's effective?
Well, I think there's a big difference between Barack Obama and Sarah Palin. Barack Obama is an extraordinary political phenomenon. He's probably the greatest campaigner since, I wouldn't rank him up there with a Truman or a Roosevelt or a Kennedy. Clinton, yes, he's a terrific campaigner. He pulled off one of the most exciting political victories. I mean, even the election night, people were talking about, oh, he's going to tie with McCain, and then by the evening was going on, and he had a landslide. So he's an extraordinary campaigner. I think he can still pull it out. The question is Palin sufficiently in the center to appeal to the wide mass of American voters? That's really the question. And that I think it's a problem for her because she's aligned herself with the extreme right and with the Tea Party, and is that sufficient to bring home an election? I would be skeptical about that.
The GOP continues to rack up numbers in the House. We know recently just Amory Burkle, upstate New York, defeated Dan Maffei. There goes a Republican seat. I mean, there goes a Democratic seat now to the Republicans. You got Sarah Pelosi right now, who will no longer be Speaker of the House. Boehner taking over.
Yes.
What is this Republican-led majority in the Senate, in the Congress going to bring, given the fact that the president's still trying to get some initiatives done? Are we still going to see the tension and the gridlock that we saw before?
Well, we have a couple of options. One option is continuing gridlock, which has existed in the past, where the president was at odds with the majority House and the Newt Gingrich era and so forth. Or we can find compromise. It seemed to me that that requires both sides to agree to compromise. I think the president's tone at his press conference, where he said he had been dealt a shellacking and that the problem was his tone, I think he needs to go further to try to work towards this bipartisan concept of governing. On the other hand, the House, under the Republicans, they have an agenda, and their agenda is very extreme. They're extreme. They want to overturn Barack Obama's health care program. So they're really at odds, and they're starting off in a very, very extremely divided partisan debate. So both sides need to do something about it. The one issue that's come up is this whole issue of earmarks, and whether or not they're going to agree to not have these earmarks, so to make government more transparent along the lines of what you were talking about with your last guest. More transparent government, more serious governing, less partisanship, more bipartisanship, but that requires the Democrats and the Republicans. I do not think that Nancy Pelosi's statements as a minority leader now have been very constructive in that respect. For example, the interview she gave in the New York Times Magazine also was that she says that she is crying about the policies that the Republicans are going to introduce. And that doesn't sound to me like the statement of a leader. That's not a leader speaking. A leader doesn't speak like that. A leader reaches out to the other side and tries to find common ground. In a country like America, we've done it before. It can be done. The alternative, in all candor, is just gridlock, nothing being accomplished, and then we end up with the possibility that the Republicans get blamed for the gridlock, and Obama benefits from that in the next presidential election.
Flip it on the other side. Talk to me about John Boehner as House Speaker. How do you think he'll be? Do you think he'll be effective?
Well, I think he'll be effective. I think if he can rally the Republicans in a constructive fashion, he will be effective. If it's just going to be more contentious fighting and gridlock, just not to keep repeating that word, then the Republicans are going to face a rude awakening when the presidential election comes up, because they're going to get blamed for the gridlock. They took it over. They're now in charge. You're not in charge. Now you're in charge. Go do something about it. So I think they also have to reach out. I think he's a perfectly good choice for it, and if he can rally his Republicans and he can make some actual effective legislation to help the country, to work out the problem of unemployment and to work out the problem of health care and all these issues that face us, then that's great. If not, well, then he has failed.
In other national news, not on the political side, but really on the public side, a lot of people are upset right now because this is the day before Thanksgiving, heading out there to the airports, got the TSA pat-downs, and the whole controversy surrounding the TSA pat-downs. Questions that possibly the public could actually boycott and not get on flights. Where do you see this going, and where do you see things right now?
Well, it's kind of where it's coming from. I mean, we've had a lot of different iterations or aspects of this. You know, we had the shoe bomber, so you had to take your shoes off. Then there was the issue with liquids. Then you had to produce your liquids and have those scanned. Now they have the pat-downs and the scanners. So the administration is not really clear on how it wants to approach this issue and whether or not it's effective. Some people have said that the Israeli approach to airport security is more effective. And the Israeli approach does not involve pat-downs. There are no pat-downs, no scanners. It's basically interviews with people coming on the planes, a different approach. So, you know, I just think that hopefully that this approach is going to be effective in doing the job, because what we've ended up with is, as you say, a potential for massive confusion. Secretary Napolitano has put it very bluntly. What she says is, look, my job is to keep terrorists off planes. If I have to do this, then I have to do it. People have to cooperate. And Secretary Clinton has objected to it. It's very confusing. There needs to be one unanimity in government on what the approach is. It should be an effective approach that will really deliver the protection to the to people that are flying and to pilots, and resolve these issues.
But it is the goal and the objective of the TSA actually to have full body scanners in all airports.
Right.
Do you think this is going to go through?
I think it will go through. I mean, I can predict as well as the other person. If they're going to be boycotts, they're going to be boycotts. If they should have probably not introduced it right before the biggest holiday, unless they had a reason for doing it and they had some threat potential that they were worried about. Because this is not a time to do it. The time to do it is when there is low capacity, and to try it out to see how it goes, not Thanksgiving. I mean, that seems to me to be a recipe for unbelievable confusion. But sometimes I do want to say this, the civil liberties movement sometimes has to look practically and pragmatically at what the objectives are here, and it's really a cost-benefit analysis, and it's you're trying to figure out what are you trying to do, and what is the objective, and what's the most effective way to do it. So either terrorism threats shut down the airlines, or we figure out a way to protect people that are flying. I think that's the choice, and that's, I think, as bluntly as the Secretary Napolitano put it.
You talked about threat possibility. When you talk about on the international front, North Korea, South Korea,
Yes.
You've got the whole issue of not a possibility, a reality. Where are we going with North Korea and South Korea?
Well, it kind of started, I think, a couple days ago or a couple weeks ago, when an American scientist was invited to North Korea, to view a nuclear facility, and to his amazement, he found hundreds or thousands of operating centrifuges. So that was number one shocker. Then we have this situation on this island that you mentioned, Yeonpyeong, where the North Koreans have opened fire on the South Koreans against civilians. What does this mean? Well, North Korea is one of the great puzzles of the world, the great enigmas of the world. Nobody knows. All the analysts are looking at this, and they don't really know what's going on. Possible theories are that there has been a recently announced succession from the leader to his son. He was made a major general or four-star general. In the period of the succession, maybe his son wants to show that he's very aggressive. Theory number one. Theory number two, they want to make this attack to force the United States and the rest of the world to come to the negotiating table and maybe give them some money or reparations or something to help with their glaring poverty issue. It's very hard to know. China is really the key aspect to this.
Why?
Because China is the only nation in the world that has leverage over North Korea. The problem that I think America has at the present time is that while China has actually issued a statement that they want calm. And I think the reason for that is that it's not in China's interest to have a war in Korea at this time. China is building up its economy, it's building up its military. So this would be a very unnecessary distraction. From the American point of view, we have a lot less leverage on China than we used to have when we were in the last Korean situation, because that war was in a whole different world and a whole different scenario. In this scenario today, China is a major economic power and holds a lot of our debt. So America's leverage against them is not that powerful. However, I think China is going to put the kibosh on this and stop this, because it's not in China's interest to have that instability in the Korean Peninsula.
Can I give you 30 seconds on NATO, Iran, Turkey? Let's get that in.
Absolutely. Well, the NATO had a summit in Lisbon, and there was an issue about creating a missile shield that would protect all the NATO members. Turkey had an issue that they did not want the communique or the statement to mention Iran. In other words, don't mention why we have to have a missile shield. Just say we do to protect everybody. So it's like wink, wink, don't mention it. Nicolas Sarkozy, the French leader, said, it's Iran. He got up, he said, it's Iran. But the Turks said, no, we don't want to mention Iran. That's our politics, and that was the conclusion. They issued a release. They agreed to a missile shield. Turkey came on board, and they never mentioned Iran. But Iran remains what we call the elephant in the room. It's always there. That's why they have a missile shield. So not to mention it, I think, is, it's just politics. And the question is now, how will the missile shield be implemented? Who's going to command it? Who's going to control it? There was an issue that Turkey had wanted to control the missile shield, and that'll have to be resolved by negotiation.
All right, Mark. Well, of course, we'll bring you back, and you'll figure it all out for us.
I look forward to it.
All right, Mark Meirowitz. Good to see you. Happy
A
holidays.